Ghana's parliament is a step closer to holding a vote on a bill that seeks to further clamp down on the rights of LGBT people. Gay sex is already punishable by up to 3 years in the West African nation, though no one has been prosecuted in years. This new bill would go further, lengthening jail terms and forcing some to undergo conversion therapy. The promotion and funding of LGBT plus activities, as well as public displays of same affection and cross-dressing, will be banned. Michael Akagbor from the Ghana Center for Democratic Development joins us via video link from the capital Accra to tell us more about how this draft legislation will affect Ghana's queer community. Michael, thanks for your time. What are the primary motivations behind the proposed bill to further clamp down on the rights of LGBT people in Ghana?
Well, thank you this evening for having me on your show. So I think primarily the motivation probably will look at it from twofold. I think one, there is the religious angle to this bill, and then there's also the political angle. If you look at the members who had pushed this bill in Parliament, the group of 8 who had pushed the private members bill to make this into law in Parliament, they are basically come from the opposition party in government. So it is basically more of a political tool that they're using to try to see if they can push the current president into the tight hole of saying that, hey, we want to pass this supposedly a bill that is supposed to protect traditional Ghanaian values, which in itself is a very contested notion. So the idea that if we could make this a political issue and we hold the president to it and tie it to the president, it could kneel to the benefit of a particular political party, seems to also be part of the motivation outside of the religious motivation for wanting to have this bill become law.
Michael, let's try and understand the general belief of what homosexuality is in Ghana. Now, one of the things that this bill would further do, outside of lengthening jail terms, will be forcing some to undergo conversion therapy. So obviously that speaks to the underlying beliefs. Now, unpack that for us.
Well, because contrary to what science says today, that homosexuality is not an illness or a sickness, there is the general belief that among many circles here that homosexuality is a disease or is an illness that can be cured through conversion. And for that reason, they are looking to include that as part of the process for rehabilitation, supposedly, as they claim, for people who identify themselves as homosexuals or as LGBT. So that in itself is problematic, to think about the fact that you write a whole bill that criminalizes entire populations and then propose that there is a conventional way to change their behavior to become normal. I mean, in the context that heterosexuality is construed as an uncontested reality of sexual expression. So that in itself speaks to the problems that accrue to this bill that is in Parliament. To think about the fact that you're going to try to put a whole group of people through a conversion therapy as condition for not imprisoning them. If they agree to do that, that is basically abusing or violating their rights to be who they are. So that is part of the reasons that make this bill very problematic.
So we talk about rights. I mean, you mentioned rights, the rights to be who they are. But what are the rights that the LGBT community are entitled to in your country?
I mean, the 1992 Ghanaian Constitution is very clear in language and in spirit. It speaks of the Constitution. I have always said on many platforms, operate on the principle of neutrality. The Constitution doesn't discriminate. So when the Constitution makes provisions and says all persons, it means all persons. It doesn't single out and say that gays or lesbians. The Constitution just says all persons are entitled to these fundamental rights that are enshrined in the Constitution. So as a matter of fact, it is a moot point to even talk about LGBT rights because the rights are already guaranteed for every Ghanaian. Whether you are LGBT, you are heterosexual, you are straight, you are gay, it doesn't really matter. the 1992 Constitution, compared to all other constitutions, is so comprehensive on the provisions of rights. And these rights are what are sacrosanct to the democratic enterprise. So it is very problematic when you have people try to tinker with the very foundation over which our democracy rights on, being that these rights are what makes us free citizens of the state. It is what guarantees the expression of our beliefs, because I had made an argument that in the same vein, the same way the Constitution does not discriminate when it comes to gender, it doesn't discriminate when it comes to religion. It just uses the concept religion, but it leaves it to the imagination of the individual as to what religion it is for him. It doesn't prescribe and say that it has to be a Christian, or it has to be Muslim, or it has to be traditional religion. It just says religion. In the same vein, when the Constitution says gender, it implies that every other identity, constructed or not, fits into the provisions that the Constitution has. So the whole issue of LGBT rights is very problematic. It's to say that the narrative that LGBT people want some kind of special separate rights, which is a lot of misinformation that is being thrown around in the country here, is also fed into the phobia surrounding as regard the conversation on the issue.
So how do international human rights organizations such as the United Nations view this proposed bill?
Well, if you look at the global situation of LGBT rights or LGBT issues across globally, yes, international bodies have stated their positions. We have the United States government that has stated its position to the protection of minorities, and also the decriminalizing of homosexuality. We also have other European organizations, institutions, or governments that have come out to denounce these harsh bills that are similarly springing up across the continent. So that has been made. The argument has been made from the global perspective. But I think that we look at it from the fact that this issue has to be contested within Ghanaian realities. I think most times the narrative from the global north tends to bring back memories of years not long past in terms of the colonial experiment and all that. And that sometimes makes the conversation murky. Then the sovereignty argument comes up where the proponents keep talking about the fact that this is an imposition from the West on traditional Ghanaian beliefs and values. So it makes a lot of sense when Ghanaians are leading the charge themselves against this bill. So I have been working across the country. I've been going around the country. I've been hosting workshops across the country. I just came back last week from a workshop in the second largest capital city in Ghana, Kumasi, where I had engaged with journalists who by themselves are also affected by the bill, in the sense that the bill prescribes that even media houses and media persons can now discuss LGBT issues because that is considered as promoting LGBT activities. And for that, they get a penalty sentence of 10 years. So now the media men themselves are coming to the realization that, wait a minute, we thought this bill was just targeted at LGBT populations. But the more you digress down the bill, you realize that there's a whole lot of populations that this bill affects, in the sense that you're talking about parents, you're talking about teachers, you're talking about doctors, you're talking about any group of population who have a duty to report. That is what the bill says. You have a duty to report if you have any information that any person is or hold themselves out as an LGBT person. So that is the dangerousness of the bill.
So, Michael, what are the political considerations as far as this bill is concerned? Because if we go across to Uganda, we know that Uganda is no longer a beneficiary of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, because of a similar situation, right? Is this something that Ghana is considering, or that the parliamentarians would consider? Because in recent times, Ghana has been speaking to many of the Bretton Woods institutions, right, looking for financial assistance.
Well, yes, and that speaks to the complexity of the issue at hand. So you have the government itself, led by the president, who seemingly seems to be against the bill. Not expressly, he hasn't really come out to say he's against it, but from all indications and based on his recent actions not to assent to other bills that have been brought to him, indicates there might be that he is looking to not assent to this bill when it passes into law by Parliament. So, in terms of the AGWA, we have done an impact analysis of the bill, social impact implication of the bill, and how it will affect us economically. So, in 2022, for instance, the trade between the United States and Ghana was, I believe, $1.9 billion, with $900 million being trade that the U.S. That we received from the U.S. That gave us a net of almost $800 million that came to Ghana from the AGWA trade. We're starting to lose all of that kind of money, and I had raised that same issue with some judge, and I told him, do you realize that we stand to lose economically? And considering the fragility of our economic society, our economic state today, that we cannot afford to go that route. Because to think about it, America is going to do what America wants to do to protect its citizens. And if Ghana has to be kicked off AGWA as a form of protecting American citizens, then that's what America is going to do. But what are we going to do as Ghanaians if we get kicked off the AGWA program? We have people who today, because of the AGWA partnership, are able to engage in the American markets. They are able to have their produce sent to the U.S. They are producing shirts and stuff over here. There's going to be a huge loss economically to the state.
Michael, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for speaking to us on Africa Today.